My best friend switched our babies at birth, then waited until her deathbed to tell me, 30 years later, after holidays, vacations, and watching our daughters grow up like sisters. When I asked her why, she smiled weakly and said, "Because if I told you when I was healthy, you'd dump me for good." I stayed silent. That was 2 weeks ago. Last night, her daughter found the letter and hasn't spoken to anyone since. Maggie and I had been best friends since middle school, through marriages, kids, and everything in between. I thought the biggest heartbreak of my life would come after learning she had cancer and only had a month to live. Seeing her on the hospital bed with tubes and in the hospital gown was never easy, but I knew she needed me by her side. I'd hold her hand and talk to her, and ignore how skinny she was, or the dark eye bags under eyes. Despite all that, she still looked like Maggie and was still cracking jokes. As Maggie's death drew near, she'd start recalling old memories. It felt safe, until she looked me straight in the eye one day and said, "Diane, I need to tell you something before I go." I thought she was going to confess that she actually did have a crush on the football star despite denying it for years, or something about an old fight we never resolved. But her voice suddenly changed and she got serious. Nothing could have prepared me for her confession being, "I switched our babies." 30 years ago, Maggie and I gave birth at the very same time. We both had daughters. Hers was named Isabella, and mine was Eva. But Maggie continued, "At the hospital, you had Isabella, and I had Eva. I switched their ID bands when no one was looking. Diane, I raised your daughter, and you raised mine." I remember sitting there staring at her as if she had just spoken another language. My ears were just ringing. I didn't say anything, and she took that as an invitation to keep going. She admitted the guilt had been eating at her and she couldn't deal with it anymore. I asked her why. It was the only thing I could muster. She said she had this wave of panic after giving birth, and convinced herself it was the right thing to do, that she thought she was protecting them. I wanted to yell and be mean, but she looked so small in that bed, so I just sat there and listened. After I left, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Every little moment with Eva replayed in my head. Her first day of kindergarten, the way she always stayed calm in a crisis, how she'd become a pediatric nurse like she was born to take care of others. Isabella was different. She was sharp-tongued, rebellious, and always kept a distance from her mom. I started to question reality, trying to come to terms with the fact my whole life was a lie. I went as far as pulling out baby photos. I looked at Isabella's face next to my late husband's, and felt my stomach drop as I realized the resemblance was uncanny. It felt like my mind was playing tricks on me. So I ordered DNA tests, and I didn't tell anyone as I waited for the results to arrive. A week had passed and an email about the DNA results came through. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the subject line for an hour before opening it. And just like Maggie said, it was true. Eva wasn't mine by blood, Isabella was. I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. I knew I couldn't tell either of them right away. I thought about keeping it a secret, but I didn't think I could keep this from them, especially since Maggie said the guilt had eaten away at her. I decided to pay her a visit since I hadn't gone back to the hospital since she told me. She still looked weak as ever, and she forced a smile when she saw me. I asked her again why she waited so long to tell me. We've spent holidays together, vacationed often. We practically raised our daughters like best friends from how much time we spent together. There were so many instances where she could have told me. So I asked her, "Why now? Why on your deathbed?" Maggie kept a smile, though it never reached her eyes. She said it was because she knew I would react this way. She knew that if she had told me when she was still healthy, I'd cut all ties to her and she'd lose decades of friendship over a stupid mistake, one she thought would never catch up to her. Maggie was right. Had she told me this way earlier, I would have dumped her as a friend for good. She said she saw my reaction when she told her, how I wanted to yell at her, but seeing her weak and sick prevented me from doing so. Maggie said her cancer was an opportunity for me to know the truth, because she'd live out her dying days knowing that I knew what happened, and she would still have me as a friend. Maggie was sure I wouldn't drop her as a friend now, and nothing in me would have done so either. I was her best friend. She was dying. She needed me. But that didn't mean we would both be taking her secret to the grave. Isabella and Eva deserved to know the truth. I left the hospital in a daze and drove to the park where Maggie and I used to take the girls when they were little. I sat on a bench watching some kids play on the swings, their laughter carrying across the playground. My mind kept going back to when Eva and Isabella were that age. They were so different even then. Eva was cautious, always thinking before acting, testing the slide with her foot before committing to the journey down. Isabella was wild, fearless, jumping from the highest point of the jungle gym without hesitation. I always chalked it up to different parenting styles, but now I wondered if it was genetics. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept looking at old photo albums, seeing both girls grow up through the years. Eva had always been so much like John, patient, kind, methodical. She even had his habit of humming while concentrating. I'd never questioned it because sometimes kids take after the other parent. But Isabella had my temper, my stubbornness, my tendency to talk with her hands. The signs were there all along, hidden in plain sight like some cruel cosmic joke. The next morning, I got a call from the hospital. Maggie had taken a turn for the worse. The doctors didn't think she'd make it through the weekend. I rushed over, all my anger temporarily pushed aside. Whatever she'd done, she was still my best friend of almost 40 years. The woman who held my hand through my mother's funeral, who helped me pick up the pieces after John died, who knew all my secrets, except apparently, I didn't know all of hers. She was barely conscious when I arrived, the disease medications making her drift in and out. I sat with her, holding her hand like I had so many times over the past weeks. Her skin felt paper thin, her fingers cold despite the warm hospital room. Between moments of clarity, she kept apologizing, kept asking if I would tell them. I spent the whole day there, calling Eva to let her know Maggie was declining rapidly. Eva had always been close to Aunt Maggie, visiting her regularly during her illness. She promised to come by after her shift at the hospital where she worked as a pediatric nurse. When Eva arrived, I watched her with new eyes. This woman I'd raised, loved with with every fiber of my being. She wasn't my biological daughter. But looking at her, all I saw was my little girl. The way she gently checked Maggie's vitals out of habit, the kind way she spoke to her even though Maggie was mostly unresponsive. That was all Eva. That was who she was, regardless of whose DNA she carried. "You should go home and rest," she said, putting her hand on my shoulder. "I can stay with Aunt Maggie for a while." "Mom?" Isabella texted me. "She's flying in tomorrow to see her mom." I told her she could stay with me since my spare room is already set up. Isabella, my biological daughter who barely knew me beyond being her mom's best friend. The thought of seeing her now, with this knowledge, made my heart race. Would I see myself in her face? Would I feel some instant connection I'd somehow missed all these years? At home, I pulled out the DNA test results again, staring at the scientific confirmation of Maggie's confession. Then I looked at my phone, at the most recent picture of Eva on my home screen. She was smiling, her arm around her husband at their anniversary dinner last month. She looked happy, content. Did I have the right to disrupt that? Did Isabella deserve to know the woman who raised her wasn't her biological mother? I didn't sleep that night either. By morning, I'd made my decision. I would tell them, but not until after Maggie passed. They deserved to hear it from me, not from her deathbed confession or some note she might have left. I would find the right words, the right time, but first, I needed to say goodbye to my best friend, the woman who had been by my side through everything and who had also betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible. I drove to the hospital the next morning, my mind racing with all the possible ways this conversation could go. I hadn't slept more than an hour, and my eyes felt like they had sand in them. The hospital parking lot was busier than usual, and I had to circle 3 times before finding a spot. Just my luck. When I got to Maggie's room, Isabella was already there. She'd arrived on an earlier flight than expected. My heart skipped a hit when I saw her. Isabella, my biological daughter. She was sitting by Maggie's bed, holding her hand and talking softly. She looked up when I entered, and I froze in the doorway. "Hi, Mrs. Peterson," she said with a small smile. She always called me that, never Diane, despite me telling her countless times over the years that she could use my first name. "Isabella," I managed to say. "I didn't know you were coming so early." "Got an earlier flight," she said, turning back to Maggie. "Mom's not doing well." I looked at Maggie. She seemed even worse than yesterday, her breathing shallow and labored. The machines around her beeped steadily, but there was a different quality to the sound now, like they were working harder to keep track of her failing systems. I stood awkwardly at the foot of the bed, suddenly feeling like an intruder. Isabella had always been polite to me but distant, like I was just her mom's friend and nothing more. Now I knew why. Some part of her had always known I was more than that. Some primal, cellular recognition that neither of us had ever acknowledged. "Eva's coming after her shift," I said, just to break the silence. Isabella nodded without looking at me. She texted me. Another awkward silence fell. I studied Isabella's profile as she watched Maggie. She had my nose, my chin, even the way she tucked her hair behind her ear was like looking in a mirror. How had I never noticed before? Or maybe I had, but attributed it to coincidence, the way we sometimes see patterns where we want to see them. A nurse came in to check Maggie's vitals, and I used the opportunity to step out into the hallway. I needed air. I needed space to think. This was all happening too fast. I wasn't ready to face Isabella with this knowledge burning inside me. I went to the hospital cafeteria and got a coffee I didn't want just to have something to do with my hands. The place was half full with visitors and staff on breaks. Normal people having a normal day. I envied them. My phone buzzed with a text from Eva saying she'd be at the hospital in an hour. When I returned to Maggie's room, Isabella was in the same position, but Maggie was awake now, her eyes open and alert in a way they hadn't been for days. "Diane?" she said, her voice barely audible. "You came back." "Of course I did," I said, moving to the other side of the bed, opposite Isabella. Maggie's eyes darted between us, and I knew what she was thinking. Here we were, mother and daughter, separated by her deception, standing on either side of her deathbed. It was like something out of a Greek tragedy. "I need to talk to Diane alone," Maggie said to Isabella, her voice surprisingly firm. Isabella looked reluctant, but nodded. "I'll go get some coffee," she said, standing up. She gave me a brief nod as she passed, and I caught a whiff of her perfume. It was the same brand I used to wear when I was younger. Once she was gone, Maggie turned to me with desperate eyes. "Have you decided?" she asked. "Will you tell them?" I sat down in the chair Isabella had vacated. "Yes," I said, "but not until after you're gone." I couldn't bring myself to say the word dead. Maggie closed her eyes, relief washing over her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'm not doing it for you," I said, surprised by the hardness in my voice. "I'm doing it because they deserve to know the truth, but I won't have your death overshadowed by this. They should be able to grieve you without complications." Maggie nodded weakly. "I understand." She reached for my hand, and after a moment's hesitation, I let her take it. Her skin felt like tissue paper, fragile and thin. "I really am sorry, Diane. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am." I didn't respond. What was there to say? That I forgave her? I wasn't sure I did. That I understood? I definitely didn't. So I just sat there, holding her hand, watching her breathe, and thinking about the 30 years of lies between us. Eva arrived before Isabella returned. She came in wearing her scrubs, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, looking tired but professional. My heart swelled at the sight of her, my daughter, because regardless of biology, that's what she was. "Mom," she said, giving me a quick hug before turning to Maggie. "How is she?" "In and out," I said. "She was awake a little while ago." Eva checked the monitors with a practiced eye, then gently took Maggie's pulse at her wrist. Always the nurse, even off duty. "Where's Isabella?" she asked. "Getting coffee," I said. "She's been here all morning." Eva nodded, pulling up another chair. "I talked to Dr. Patel in the hallway," she said quietly. "He doesn't think she'll make it through the night." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Despite everything, the thought of losing Maggie hit me hard. 37 years of friendship, more than half my life. And now it was ending, with this terrible secret hanging between us. Isabella returned, and the 3 of us sat around Maggie's bed in a strange, silent vigil. Eva and Isabella chatted quietly about Isabella's flight, about work, about anything but the dying woman in front of us. I stayed silent, watching them interact. They'd grown up like cousins, close but with their own separate lives. Now I knew they were actually sisters, half-sisters at least, sharing John's DNA. The day crawled by. Nurses came and went. Maggie drifted in and out of consciousness. Around dinner time, Eva suggested we take shifts so we could each get something to eat and maybe rest a bit. I'll stay first, Isabella said. You two go get some food. I wanted to protest. I didn't want to leave Maggie, but Eva was already standing up, stretching her back. Good idea, she said. Mom, let's go to that diner across the street. Their soup is actually decent. I followed Eva out, glancing back at Isabella sitting by Maggie's bed, my daughter watching over the woman she thought was her mother. The whole situation was so twisted I could barely wrap my head around it. At the diner, Eva and I sat in a booth by the window. I could see the hospital from here, its windows lit up against the darkening sky. Eva ordered soup and a sandwich. I wasn't hungry but got a bowl of soup anyway, knowing I should eat something. You look terrible, Mom, Eva said bluntly. Have you slept at all? I shook my head. Not really. You need to take care of yourself, she said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. Aunt Maggie wouldn't want you running yourself into the ground. I looked at her hand on mine. Eva had John's hands, long fingers, neat nails, but she had Maggie's eyes, I realized now. The same warm brown, the same shape. How had I never noticed? Maybe because we so often see what we expect to see. When a child has your husband's smile or your mother's laugh, you don't question it. Mom? Eva was looking at me with concern. Are you okay? Just tired, I said, forcing a smile. And sad. Eva nodded, understanding. It's hard watching someone you love suffer, she said. I see it every day at work, but it's different when it's someone you know. We ate in silence for a while. I managed a few spoonfuls of soup, but each bite felt like a chore. My mind was too full, too chaotic to focus on eating. Isabella seems to be handling it well, Eva said eventually. She's always been so stoic. Like her father, I said without thinking, then froze, realizing what I'd said. But Eva just nodded, assuming I meant Robert, Maggie's ex-husband. Yeah, Uncle Rob was never one for showing emotion, she agreed. Remember that time at my wedding when he gave that super awkward toast? Not a single feeling in sight. I managed a small laugh, remembering. Robert had been divorced from Maggie for 15 years by then, but had come to Eva's wedding as a courtesy. His toast had been painfully brief and formal. Isabella takes after him in a lot of ways, Eva continued. Except she got Aunt Maggie's, creativity. Remember those amazing paintings she used to do in elevated school? I nodded, my throat tight. Isabella had been an incredibly talented artist as a teenager. I'd always assumed she got that from Maggie, who loved to paint. But I was artistic too. I'd done pottery for years, had even sold some pieces at local craft fairs. Another connection I'd missed. We finished our meal and headed back to the hospital. Isabella was still sitting by Maggie's bed, scrolling through her phone. She looked up when we entered. Any change? Eva asked. Isabella shook her head. The nurse came in to adjust her pain medication, said she's comfortable. Eva nodded, slipping back into nurse mode. That's good. Pain management is the priority at this stage. I resumed my seat on the other side of the bed, watching Maggie's chest rise and fall with shallow breaths. The three of us settled into another silent vigil, each lost in our own thoughts. Around midnight, Eva convinced Isabella to go back to her apartment to get some sleep. I'll stay with Mom, she said. You've been here all day. Go rest, and you can come back in the morning. Isabella hesitated, but eventually agreed. She leaned down to kiss Maggie's forehead, whispered something I couldn't hear, then gathered her things. Call me if anything changes, she said to Eva, who promised she would. After Isabella left, Eva turned to me. You should go home too, Mom. I can handle this. I shook my head. I'm staying, I said firmly. You can go if you need to. Eva sighed but didn't argue. She knew me well enough to recognize when I wouldn't budge. At least try to get some sleep in that chair, she said. I'll wake you if there's any change. I nodded, leaning back in the uncomfortable hospital chair and closing my eyes. I didn't expect to sleep, but exhaustion must have caught up with me because the next thing I knew, Eva was gently shaking my shoulder. Mom, she whispered. I think it's time. Her breathing has changed. I sat up, instantly alert. The room was dim, lit only by the monitors and a small lamp in the corner. Maggie's breathing was indeed different, more labored, with long pauses between each breath. Eva had moved her chair closer to the bed and was holding Maggie's hand. Should we call Isabella? I asked, my voice hoarse from sleep. Eva shook her head. There's not enough time, and she needs rest. I moved to the other side of the bed and took Maggie's other hand. Together, Eva and I sat with her as her breathing became more and more irregular. The monitors beeped softly in the background, tracking her fading vital signs. It's okay, Aunt Maggie, Eva said softly. We're here. You're not alone. I couldn't speak. My throat was too tight, my chest too heavy. Despite everything, this was Maggie, my best friend since we were 12 years old, the person who knew all my secrets, who had been there for every major moment of my adult life. And now she was leaving, taking her biggest secret with her, except she wasn't taking it with her. She'd passed that burden to me. Maggie took one last rattling breath, and then she was gone. The monitor flatlined, its steady tone filling the quiet room. Eva reached over and turned it off, then gently closed Maggie's eyes. She's gone, she said softly, tears streaming down her face. I nodded, my own tears falling onto our joined hands. I know. Eva called for the nurse, who confirmed what we already knew and noted the time of death. Then she left us alone to say our goodbyes. Eva and I sat in silence, each processing our grief in our own way. I should call Isabella, Eva said eventually, wiping her eyes. Let her sleep, I said. Tell her in the morning. There's nothing she can do now. Eva nodded, looking exhausted. You're right. It can wait a few hours. We left the hospital around 3 a.m., after the nurses had done what they needed to do. Eva insisted I come stay at her place rather than driving home alone, and I was too tired to argue. Her apartment was small but cozy, with a comfortable guest room that she kept ready for visitors. Try to get some sleep, Mom, she said, giving me a hug at the guest room door. We'll deal with everything in the morning. I nodded, hugging her back tightly. My daughter, not by fluids, but in every way that mattered. And tomorrow, I would have to tell her that her entire life was based on a lie. I didn't sleep. I lay in Eva's guest bed, staring at the ceiling, rehearsing what I would say. How do you tell someone that the woman who raised them wasn't their biological mother? That the woman they knew as their mother's best friend was actually their birth mother? There was no good way to say it. No way to soften that blow. Morning came too quickly. I heard Eva moving around the apartment making coffee. I got up, splashed water on my face, and tried to look less like I'd been awake all night. When I came out to the kitchen, Eva was on the phone with Isabella, telling her about Maggie's passing. Her voice was gentle but steady, the voice she probably used with families at the hospital. Mom's here with me, she was saying. We'll come pick you up in an hour or so, and we can go to the funeral home together to make arrangements. She paused, listening. I know it's a lot, but we'll get through it together. After she hung up, she handed me a cup of coffee. Isabella's taking it hard, she said. She sounded pretty broken up. I nodded, sipping the coffee. It was good and strong, just how I needed it. It's never easy, losing a parent, I said, thinking of my own mother's death years ago. Eva sat down across from me at her small kitchen table. I called the hospital. They've already transferred Aunt Maggie to the funeral home she prearranged with. We just need to go finalize the details for the service. I nodded again, impressed as always by Eva's efficiency in a crisis. She was so good at handling practical matters, at taking care of others, just like John had been. I should go home and change first, I said, looking down at my rumpled clothes from yesterday. I can lend you something, Eva offered. We're about the same size. I agreed, too tired to argue. Eva found me a simple black dress that fit well enough, and I took a quick shower while she got ready. By the time we left to pick up Isabella, I felt marginally more human, though the weight of what I had to do still pressed heavily on me. Isabella was waiting outside Eva's building when we pulled up. She looked pale and drawn, her eyes red from crying. She got into the backseat of my car without saying much. The visit to the funeral home was a blur of paperwork and decisions. Maggie had pre-planned most of her funeral, making things easier, but there were still details to finalize. Eva took charge, asking questions and making notes, while Isabella sat quietly, occasionally offering input when asked directly. I tried to focus, to be helpful, but my mind kept drifting to what would come after. We decided to have the funeral in 3 days, giving out-of-town relatives time to make arrangements to attend. Maggie had wanted a simple service at the local chapel, followed by cremation. No viewing, no elaborate casket, just a celebration of her life with the people who loved her. After the funeral home, we went to lunch at a small cafe nearby. None of us was particularly hungry, but Eva insisted we needed to eat. We ordered sandwiches that we barely touched, and coffee that we drank too quickly. I should start calling people, Eva said, pulling out her phone. Aunt Maggie's cousins in Ohio, her college friends, the book club ladies. I can help with that, I offered, grateful for a task to focus on. Isabella nodded. I'll contact Dad and his side of the family, she said, and I need to call work to extend my leave. We divided up the list of people to notify, and I felt a strange sense of normalcy in the midst of this surreal situation. This was what people did when someone died. They made calls, they arranged services, they moved forward one step at a time. The world didn't stop, even when it felt like it should. The next 3 days passed in a whirlwind of activity. Eva took time off work to help with arrangements. Isabella stayed at Eva's apartment, the two of them finding comfort in each other's company. I went home to my empty house each night, telling them I needed space to grieve, but really I was trying to find the courage to tell them the truth. The funeral was beautiful, in a sad way. The chapel was filled with flowers and photographs of Maggie throughout her life. Many showed the two of us together, at elevated school graduation, at our weddings, on vacations with our families, a visual timeline of our friendship, with no hint of the secret that had divided us. People spoke about Maggie's kindness, her sense of humor, her love for her daughter. Isabella gave a moving eulogy that left everyone in tears. Eva sat beside me, holding my hand tightly as we listened. I kept looking between them, seeing the similarities and differences, wondering how I would ever find the words to tell them what Maggie had done. After the service, there was a reception at Maggie's house. Isabella had asked me to help host, saying she couldn't face it alone. The house was filled with people sharing memories of Maggie, eating the food that neighbors had brought, offering condolences to Isabella, and by extension, to Eva and me. By evening, most of the guests had left. Only the three of us remained, along with Robert, who had flown in for the funeral and was staying at a hotel nearby. We sat in Maggie's living room, surrounded by the remnants of the reception, half-empty platters of food, wilting flower arrangements, sympathy cards stacked on every surface. I should start cleaning up, Isabella said, standing. Leave it for tomorrow, Robert said. He'd been quiet most of the day, grieving in his own reserved way. You're exhausted, Isabella nodded, sinking back onto the couch. I don't know what I'm supposed to do now, she admitted. With the house, with Mom's things, it's all so overwhelming. You don't have to figure it out right away, Eva said gently. Take your time. I sat there, listening to them talk, feeling the weight of my secret growing heavier by the minute. If I was going to tell them, it should be now, while we were all together. Before Isabella went back to her life in Chicago, before Eva returned to her busy schedule at the hospital, before Robert flew back to wherever he was living these days. There's something I need to tell you all, I said suddenly, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. They all turned to look at me, surprised by my serious tone. Before Maggie died, I continued, my heart pounding. She told me something that changes everything. I took a deep breath, looking at the three confused faces staring back at me. My hands were shaking so badly I had to clasp them together in my lap. What is it, Diane? Robert asked, leaning forward in his chair. Maggie told me something before she died, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, something she'd been keeping secret for 30 years. Eva reached over and touched my arm. Mom, what's wrong? You're scaring me. I looked at her, my sweet Eva, who wasn't biologically mine, and then at Isabella, who was. The words felt stuck in my throat. Maggie switched our babies at birth, I finally said. Isabella is actually my biological daughter, and Eva is Maggie's. The silence that followed was deafening. Isabella's face went completely white. Eva's hand dropped from my arm like I'd burned her. Robert just stared, his mouth slightly open. That's not funny, Isabella finally said, her voice hard. I'm not joking, I replied. I wish I was. Maggie told me a few days before she died. I had DNA tests done to confirm it. I pulled the folded papers from my purse and set them on the coffee table. The results came back positive. Eva picked up the papers with trembling hands. She scanned them quickly, her nurse's training helping her understand the clinical language. This can't be right, she whispered. It is, I said. Maggie admitted everything. She switched your ID bands in the hospital when no one was looking. Isabella stood up suddenly. So you're saying my mother, the woman whose funeral we just attended, stole me from you and gave you her baby instead? Her voice was rising with each word. And you're choosing now to tell us this? I only found out days ago, I said defensively. I wanted to wait until after the funeral. I didn't want this to overshadow saying goodbye to Maggie. Robert had picked up the DNA results and was examining them closely. These appear legitimate, he said quietly. He looked up at Isabella. You always did look more like John than like Maggie or me. Isabella whirled on him. You believe this? Just like that? Robert shrugged helplessly. The science is pretty clear. Eva hadn't said anything more. She was just sitting there, staring at nothing, the papers still clutched in her hand. Eva, I said gently, are you okay? She looked up at me, her eyes swimming with tears. So you're not my mom? She asked, her voice small and broken. My heart shattered. Of course I'm your mom, I said fiercely. I raised you. I loved you every single day of your life. Nothing changes that. Everything changes that, Isabella shouted. She was pacing now, her hands gesturing wildly. Everything. My entire life has been a lie. My mother wasn't my mother. My father isn't my father. She stopped and stared at me. And you're what? My biological mother who never bothered to notice I wasn't your kid? That stung. It wasn't like that, I said. It wasn't that we never noticed anything. There were moments, times when I'd look at you and feel this strange connection, or when someone would comment on how much you looked like John, but without any reason to suspect something so extreme. We rationalized those moments away. Who would ever imagine their best friend would switch their babies? Robert stood up and put his hand on Isabella's shoulder. Sit down, Bella. Let's try to process this calmly. She shrugged his hand off. Don't tell me to be calm, and don't call me Bella. You're not my father. Robert flinched like she'd slapped him. I raised you, he said quietly. That counts for something. Does it? Isabella demanded. Because apparently in this family, biology means nothing and lies mean everything. Eva finally spoke up. Stop it, Isabella, she said, her voice surprisingly steady. This isn't helping. Isabella turned to her. Oh, I'm sorry. Is this uncomfortable for you? Finding out your mother lied to everyone for 30 years and stole someone else's baby? She's still my mother, Eva said firmly. And she's still the woman who raised you and loved you. Loved me? Isabella laughed bitterly. She didn't even want me. She switched me because she thought she'd be a terrible mother. She rejected me before I was even a day old. I stood up then, needing to defend Maggie despite everything. That's not fair. Maggie was suffering from severe postpartum depression. She wasn't thinking clearly. And that excuses what she did? Isabella demanded. No, I admitted. Nothing excuses it, but it explains it. Isabella shook her head, tears streaming down her face now. I can't do this. I can't be here right now. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. Isabella, wait, I called after her. Let her go, Robert said. She needs time. The door slammed behind her, and the three of us were left in another uncomfortable silence. Eva was the first to speak. So Maggie was my biological mother, she said slowly, like she was testing out the words. I nodded. Yes. And John was my biological father. Yes. Eva looked at the DNA results again. Did he know? Did my dad know I wasn't his biological daughter? No, I said firmly. John never knew. Neither of us had any idea until Maggie told me. Eva nodded, processing this. I need some air, she said, standing up. I'm going for a walk. Do you want me to come with you? I asked anxiously. She shook her head. I need to think. She walked out more calmly than Isabella had, gently closing the door behind her. Robert and I were left alone in Maggie's living room. He sighed heavily and ran a hand through his gray hair. Well, he said, this is quite the bombshell. I sank back onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. I'm sorry, Robert. I didn't know how else to tell everyone. He waved away my apology. Not your fault. Maggie's the one who created this mess. He paused. Though I have to say, it explains a lot about Isabella. She and I never quite connected the way a father and daughter should. I always thought it was because of the separation, but maybe there was more to it. I nodded, thinking of all the times I'd felt an inexplicable bond with Isabella, despite her keeping me at arm's length. Nature versus nurture, I murmured. Robert stood up. I should go find Isabella, make sure she's okay. Thank you, I said. I don't think she wants to see me right now. After Robert left, I sat alone in Maggie's house, surrounded by the remnants of her funeral reception. Photos of her smiled at me from every surface. I picked up one from our college graduation, the two of us in our caps and gowns, arms around each other, grinning at the camera. We looked so young, so full of hope for the future. Neither of us could have imagined where life would take us. I must have dozed off on the couch because I woke to the sound of the front door opening. Eva walked in, her face puffy from crying but calmer than when she'd left. Hey, she said softly, sitting beside me. Hey, I replied. Are you okay? She shrugged. Not really, but I'm processing it. She took my hand. You're still my mom. That's what I kept thinking about on my walk. You're the one who taught me to ride a bike and helped me with my homework and held my hair back when I was sick. DNA doesn't change that. Tears filled my eyes. I was so afraid you'd hate me, I admitted. Why would I hate you? You didn't do anything wrong. I should have known somehow. I should have realized. Eva shook her head. That's ridiculous. How could you possibly have known? She squeezed my hand. I'm angry at Aunt Maggie, at my biological mother, I guess, but not at you. I hugged her tightly, relief washing washing over me. Have you heard from Isabella? I asked when we pulled apart. Eva shook her head. Number Robert texted me that he found her at a bar downtown. He's staying with her. I nodded, trying not to feel hurt that my biological daughter wanted nothing to do with me. She needs time. She'll come around, Eva said, but she didn't sound convinced. The next few days were tense. Isabella refused to speak to me, communicating only through Robert or Eva when absolutely necessary. She stayed at Maggie's house, sorting through her mother's belongings with a grim determination. Eva went back to work, throwing herself into her nursing shifts with unusual intensity. I went home and tried to give everyone space, though it unalived me to be separated from both my daughters when we all needed each other most. A week after the funeral, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Isabella standing on my porch, looking uncomfortable but determined. Can I come in? She asked stiffly. Of course, I said, stepping aside to let her pass. She walked into my living room and stood awkwardly, looking around at the familiar space. She'd been in my house countless times over the years, but never with this knowledge between us. I found something in Maggie's things, she said, pulling an envelope from her purse. It's addressed to me. I thought you should be here when I read it. I nodded, surprised and touched that she wanted me present for this. Would you like some tea or coffee? I offered. No, she said shortly. Let's just do this. We sat on opposite ends of my couch. Isabella took a deep breath and opened the envelope. Inside was a letter written in Maggie's familiar handwriting. Isabella began to read aloud. My dearest Isabella, if you're reading this, then Diane has told you the truth about your birth. I'm so sorry you had to find out this way. I know you must be angry and confused, and you have every right to be. What I did was unforgivable. I can offer explanations but not excuses. I was young and scared and suffering from severe postpartum depression, though I didn't know that's what it was at the time. I convinced myself that Diane would be a better mother to you than I could ever be. I thought I was protecting you. I was wrong. As the years passed, it became harder and harder to tell the truth. How could I admit what I'd done without destroying everything? So I kept my secret, watching you grow up calling me mom, while your biological mother was right there all along. The guilt has been my constant companion. Please know that I loved you with all my heart, even if I had no right to call you my daughter. And please don't blame Diane. She had no idea until I told her at the very end. She's your true mother in every way that matters, by family and by right. I hope someday you can forgive me, though I don't deserve it. All my love, always, Maggie. Isabella's voice broke on the last words. She folded the letter carefully and put it back in the envelope. She left letters for Eva and Robert too, she said quietly. I haven't given them theirs yet. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Isabella looked at me directly for the first time. I don't know what to do with this, she admitted. I'm so angry at her, but she's gone, so I can't even yell at her. I know, I said. I felt the same way. Did you forgive her? Isabella asked. I thought about it honestly. I'm still working on it, I said. Some days I think I can. Other days I'm furious all over again. Isabella nodded. That makes sense. She hesitated. I don't know how to feel about you either. You're my biological mother, but you're also just Aunt Diane, the woman who was always around when I was growing up. I don't know how to bridge that gap. We don't have to figure it all out right away, I said gently. We can take it slow. Get to know each other better. I'd like that, she said, surprising me. Maybe we could have lunch sometime, just the two of us. I'd love that, I said, trying not to sound too eager. Isabella stood up to leave. At the door, she turned back. Eva's really lucky, you know, to have had you as her mom. Tears pricked my eyes. Thank you for saying that. After she left, I sat back down on the couch, feeling like something had shifted. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, not yet, but it was a beginning, a chance to build something new from the ruins of Maggie's deception. The next day, Eva called to tell me that Isabella had given her Maggie's letter. It explained a lot, she said, about why she did what she did. I'm still processing it, but I think eventually I'll be okay. And us? I asked hesitantly. Are we okay? We're more than okay, Mom, Eva said firmly. You're stuck with me, DNA or no DNA. I laughed through my tears. I wouldn't have it any other way. Over the next few months, we all found our new normal. Isabella and I had our lunch, which turned into a weekly tradition. We talked about everything. Her childhood, my marriage to John, her career in Chicago. Slowly, I got to know my biological daughter as an adult, and she got to know me as more than just her mother's friend. Eva and Isabella grew closer too, bonded by their shared experience. They discovered they were half-sisters through John, which gave them a biological connection neither had expected. Robert remained in their lives, his relationship with Isabella strained but healing. 6 months after Maggie's death, the four of us gathered at my house for dinner. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of awkwardness, still wounds that hadn't fully healed. But as I looked around my table at these people who had been thrown together by Maggie's deception, and were now choosing to be a family anyway, I felt something like peace. Isabella raised her glass in a toast. To family, she said. The ones we're born with, and the ones we choose. To family, we all echoed, our glasses clinking together in the warm light of my dining room. And in that moment, I knew that despite everything, we were going to be okay.